variable scope in Python, please watch the video till the end. Do not forget to click on the subscribe and like button. So, variable is the most important thing of any programming language, and in Python, there are three different levels of variable scope. Since you know that Python is a scripting language, it is also an object oriented language. So variables can be accessed both ways. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell you about how to access them by using getters and setters, scopes, and all the details. In next 5 to 10 minutes, you will understand everything, and I'll also share this code so that you can also try it out. So first thing is whatever variable you define in the file, the script file, that becomes a global variable and it can be accessed, which is fine, right? Now there is a caveat. There is a local variable also when you have a method. Now inside this method, you can always read this variable, which is not a problem, but when you have to update it, that time it creates the problem. So what I mean to say, let me tell you that. So we are trying to access this variable here. We'll understand this, then we'll go into the class hierarchy where you have the instance variable, then you have the static or the class variable, and how this thing works. You will understand each and everything in detail. So let's try to call this method, which is printing the global variable. Now what I want to do is I have to update this variable, and I'll say my name, for example, here, and then let me print it. So you might expect that this value is assigned here and it will be printed. But the irony, yeah, so this guy got printed because you have defined this variable here, and this is working fine. But the problem is this has been shadowed. What does that mean? It means that you are not accessing this variable, because if you will try to print it here, then you would find that this is having a different variable value. So this is the concept which is called as variable shadowing. So now the problem here, how could you use or print the variable which is not in local scope? Local scope is within this method, right? But you want to use it which is outside, like at the script level, not at the method level. So Python has provided a keyword which is called as global. So if you will use this global keyword here, now everything will fall in place, everything will be in sync, which means that now the scope has been changed. See, let's see here, and then everything is consistent. This variable is been assigned here, you are seeing that value, and since this variable has updated this, so you are also seeing this variable outside. So far so good. Now let's jump into the concept of classes or how they work, right? So let me create a class here. We'll name the class as my class. Now let's create a variable here, and we will also give it the same name as my class, and we will call it as class level. How to access this variable is again simple thing. What we'll do is we will say print, and then we will say the class name, and then we will try to print this. So this variable and this variable are same. It could be same or different or whatever, but the question here is when you say my class and then you access the variable, that's what the static variable is. But when you just call this variable which is defined somewhere, it's the global variable. For example, if you are trying to access the variable which is not defined in global, it won't even print, it will give you error. So this is how the class variable would be defined and called, and you can switch over to access them by doing either just a variable name. If it's available in the script, it will print. Otherwise, use the class name dot variable name. So this is the second thing. Now let's jump to the third thing, which is the instance level. So in Java there is a constructor, same way in Python there is initializer or init method, which will typically define the values basically of the variable. So what we are going to do, whenever we will initialize the class, we can pass a value, we can name it as value, and then it will assign my var is equal to value. Fine. Now whenever, as soon as you create the object, you would have this variable. So let's try to create the object of my class here. I say object is equal to my class, and what name I would do is instance level. Now if I'll print this, let's see what happens. So this is printing the same because this static variable. So I am going to do it with object, and then let's see. So this is now printing the instance level. So this is how, when you do object dot and then you print this, you will get this variable. When you do class dot, let's say if you do class or my class dot, then this will print the class level. So this is how the scope is coming in. Now when we have to set the values, how we are going to do that, let's try this thing. So for example, I have a setter method. Let's say I have a setter method. So I would say set variable, and then I would pass a value. So what we are going to do is we will look at the three, like the instance level, class level, and the global level, how we will set those value and how we'll retrieve those values. So first thing first, I will set the value of the variable, which is my variable, at the instance level from the parameter here, and then we will just print it at the instance level. So let's say here that this will, let's call the setter method, and we will say instance. And when we print it, basically this is right now printing the class level because we are accessing the static variable, not the object variable. So this is only assigning the variable to the myvar, which is in scope of object, not in the class. That is why it was not getting set. So now if we do it, we see this instance, right? Now we'll use this same object set variable method, and we will try to update the variable which is at the class level. How that can be done? So this is simple. You just remove this, and then you will find the error here that this has been shadowed. This is a local variable. If you try to update it, probably nothing will happen. Let's see. So you still see instance variable and not the value which you have passed here in the set variable, which is class. So to update that in the class, you need to update the scope, and this can be done by chaining my class, which is your class name dot your static variable name. So this would start showing up basically now at the class level. So what we did here is we are trying to print the variable, and when we are trying to print, how we are printing, we are trying to get it by the object. So we have to now get it from the class. Let's see this. Now we are able to set the value properly on the class and then get the value properly. Let me show again. So we are trying to set the value here, and then this value here which was set uh, in my variable, this is retrieved here by this. Now let's come to the most interesting thing, which will be our global variable. How to update that, that is where the confusion basically arises. So if I have to set the global variable, which is this, technically when I say my var, this value must get set. but then it is not happening. So to get that, we will just follow the same thing which we did here to change the scope. So now we are trying to do here. Now this global variable, whenever you call the set method, I would say global. And then what will happen is you have instantiated the class with the instance level, then you did set the value at the global level. Now you will try to call the value at the global level, and let's see what happens. And then this value has been set. Why? Because if you have to update the global level variable, then you need to use the global keyword. But if you just have to get the value, you don't have to use this global variable. So now let's try to go to that use case. We will say get variable, and then we will just basically return, and then we will say my variable. So this would of course always return the whatever is the global value for this, so long as it's not been updated here. So let's do this. So we are trying to set, and then when we try to do a set on this might be shadowed. Shadowed means this is not the global variable, but this is something else in some different scope. So let's try to run this. Now we see this global variable, whatever is, so we call the where, but then this goes nothing because this variable is first not in the object level, because whatever is there in the object level, that variable has to be done with self. This will set the value at the instance level. If you have to set it at the class level, you have to use the name MyClass, which will update the value at the class level, or we can call it as the static vary. And then if you have to set it at the global level, you have to do it like this. So this is how, when you update, you have to change or use the appropriate scope. And while reading, when you are trying to read it, you just, if you use this, it would read the global variable if it is there in the scope of this method. If it is not there, this is just a local variable, and nothing much. So probably let's try to call the get var, and let's see what error we face if we just have this my var. So there will be four options in that also. Let me show you that. So we are trying to call print, and then we would say object dot get value. So first thing, let's say if I have any local variable, I would say anywhere is equal to local. So once I call this is going to print local here. Let's see. Yeah, I'll comment out this so it will be more clear for you guys. This is local, right? Now we have to, when we are trying to get the value, if we have to get the same value from the level of instance, so what we are going to do is we can do self dot myvar, and then we can now comment this out, or yeah, we can now comment this out, it's not needed. So we are trying to get the value from the instance level. So we got the instance level. Now we will do it from the class level. So what we need to do is we will say my class. So this same method will give us the value at the class level. Now if we have to get the value from the global level, then we just have to use this variable, and then we will say global, and then we will say myvar. So as soon as the interpreter comes here, it would understand. And by the way, you can always assign it here. So after this line, whatever is the value of this would be whatever is given at the global level. So let's run this here. Now there is some malware is assigned before the global declaration, line number 15. Yeah, so local variable, you can just remove that because this was assigned and then again used and whatever the local variable shadowing. So by this, now we are able to get the scope from the local to the global. I'll just show you this again. This one is local and then this one is global. So I hope this was helpful. Again, I will summarize what we learned. So in Python, there are several scopes of the variable. The name could be same, but to read and write, which means to access the value in read mode or to set the value or update the value, there are different levels. The first level, the topmost level, is the global level, which variable might be available to all the methods which are directly as the script, like here, or all the classes or all the instances which are using the self keyword. So that would be accessed. Read can be done anyway, but to write or update them, you have to change the scope by doing global. So after that, you can always update the global variable. Otherwise, it won't be updated because it's not in that scope. Second level is at the class level. Class level means this is a static variable, class name dot variable name, and you can read and write both by using the class name dot operator, then the variable name, like this here. Third scope is basically the instance level, wherein you have to use your self dot. So whatever are the objects, they will have that value. You can directly use self dot to read and write, basically update. That is where it would come. And the last is the local level. Local level means whatever the method you're running. For instance, if you're running a for loop and then you create the I, right? So if you have def and then you have the method, or let's say function, and you are trying to do for I in range 5, print I. So this variable here has the local scope. So these are in nutshell the scopes. I know this could be a little bit, this could have been a little bit difficult initially, but yeah, with little bit of practice and little bit of documentation, you would be able to grab this concept. And if you have any question, just leave the comment, and I'll be able to answer you. Thanks for watching. If you like it, please like. What you want to hear more about Python or anything in programming, leave that in the comment. Like the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you. My name is Prem Jain.